I'll start with industrial hemp. I don't go much into the detail here because we could talk a lot about the history, the prohibition, all the different applications. I will focus on that for a little while. So here on this diagram, you can see the clear difference of what is because it's all the same family of cannabis, right? So here it shows the difference of what is indica, sativa, and ruderalis, and how cannabis sativa breaks down into different sections. So we are specifically talking about the non-psychoactive plant here with industrial hemp. This is how it looks like. Probably most of you can imagine, but some people don't really know how tall the plant can grow. So this is up to like 3 meters. This is the close look at the hemp stalk, which is what we're going to be talking about today primarily. On the right, you can see the clear separation of fibers. This is what's happening in the decortication line, where the fibers get separated from the sheaths or the hearts of the plant. Both can be used for different applications. You can see it here on this diagram. When I first saw this, I was kind of amazed. So here you see the value chain, the uses for hemp and different applications of the different parts of the biomass of the plant. There is a little mistake here. If you look at the leaves and hearts, the hearts are actually derived from the stalk. So that should be the light green as well. There is like bast fibers and hearts. Yeah, I just think like when I first saw this, you know, I was questioning, asking myself, like, how are we not yet surrounded with all things made of hemp? And why it is so hard to scale this? Why people have such a strong stigma connected with the plant? And that questioning and wondering about these topics led me to founding this organization. I basically, you know, reach out to Hanna Gabrielova, which maybe some of you know her, maybe some of you don't. She's one of the pioneers in the hemp sector in Europe and worldwide, advocate for sustainable development goals. Yeah, she has her own farm in the Czech Republic, and yeah, basically she's like the signpost of the hemp industry, really, like knowing what people doing. She's involved in all kinds of projects, so it was kind of natural to reach out to her. And we founded this organization. We're a non-profit. I will talk a bit about that in a minute. So we're a non-profit. We were founded in January 2020, this year. We position ourselves as a think tank, just marrying advocacy and research and development work, with also now, as Sven said, we're still in developing stage. So we're also developing consultancy offerings, and also we're a membership association. So we want to build a community. We want to build a network of people that are, you know, around the hemp space, working in environmental issues, working around climate change, bioeconomy, all that kind of stuff. We focus primarily on environmental benefits of hemp and all the ecological aspects of the crop. That's our focus. That's where we see a big gap. And geographically, we focus on the European Union. We have some members and advisory board members from other parts of the world, but for now, we focus on the EU. So this is the structure. We're board of directors. It's me, Hanna, and Juan. It's the three of us. Then we have a growing team of really interesting individuals joining us also from all parts of the world, from Spain, from Ireland, Netherlands. We have advisory board. There's currently like 14 advisors from the hemp industry, environmental law, all those areas where we need some support and knowledge and information. So there's all kinds of climate policies, carbon markets, carbon accounting, sustainability, geology, or people that know about phytoremediation, for example, and industry specialists of the hemp industry. Then we also have members, as we are associations, so they're like similar to to climate cleanup. We have members. There are people from all parts of the European continent and also all parts of the world. Some people from Asia, some from South America. This is our mission statement. We accelerate the use of industrial hemp for soil regeneration, carbon sequestration, and climate resilience. This is our main focus. This is how it looks like in how it projects in our three of our pillars, where the soil and CO2 really is more about the R&D, and the industrial application is more about the consultancy and how we work with industry stakeholders and companies and help them integrate the materials. Here is a little bit of a breakdown of what the soil regeneration aspect is all about, what hemp can do for the soil and for the farmers. Basically, you know, how it all started was just thinking, Hannah, I was asking her, like, what do we have to say to the people? What do we have to show to the people so that we, you know, really make it clear what this plant can do for the environment? So this was one of them. Industrial hemp is great for transitioning to organic farming. You know, it benefits the land in multiple different ways. Farmers don't need to use any fossil fuel derived pesticides or chemical fertilizers. It's a big issue in Holland, actually, with methane and all kinds of green gas emissions coming from the agricultural sector. So that can help. No GMO is required to grow hemp. It also suppresses weeds. As you've seen in the picture before, it grows quite densely, and so it helps suppress weeds and other pathogens in soil. It also improves its structure and quality. And when it's used in crop rotations, it increases the yield of follow-on crops. Sometimes it replenishes vital nutrients in the soil. It also takes away some nutrients, obviously, because it's a crop, but it also replenishes some. So it's really good for crop rotation. One of the really interesting aspects is the phytoremediation of the crop. Obviously, there are other industrial sustainable crops that can be used for that. But hemp is specifically good at extracting like contaminants from the ground, chemical pollutants, nickel, lead, cadmium, all those kind of things. So when there is a very polluted land, it can be used for that. It can be grown on marginal lands. And yeah, to really accelerate this, we need to start doing pilot projects, which was kind of hard at the beginning of this year due to Corona, but we're still in negotiations with some universities and research centers to get going and get that done next year. So there's another pillar, the CO2 sequestration, which now there are more people talking about this in the hemp industry. It's, you know, the hemp biomass. It has a real potential to be a major carbon sink, but obviously we have to measure that. So as the NGO, like one of our objectives is to measure and monitor the exact amount of CO2 that could get sequestered in the plant's biomass and the products that are made of it. Obviously, you can hear you know quite a lot about this because, you know, we're talking about the climate cleanup here. But there are all kinds of claims being made by the hemp industry stakeholders. How, yeah, one hectare of hemp, for example, sequesters this amount and these tons, 22 tons or 15 tons. You will see all kinds of numbers, but then there is nobody questions of how that biomass gets used. So if it's someone who's working in the CBD sector, for example, then it might be a little bit misleading and using that argument to greenwash a little bit. So we really have to make it clear of how are we going to use those products and what can be classified as a carbon sink. So when we have that and we have a group to work on this together, we can create a new methodology and trade VCUs on the voluntary carbon markets. That's one of our goals. It will take some time. That's the third aspect, or the third pillar of what we focus on. One of the main ones is to work with industry stakeholders, not from the hemp industry, but general industry, and help them integrate the hemp materials, hemp fibers and herds primarily to their supply chain or production chains. It's also one of the ways how we can bring revenue to the organization. So yeah, this is how we want to do this. Basically, is through advocacy, is through consultancy that I have just mentioned. Innovation, we want to partner with designers, architects, universities to develop new products, new ways of putting the materials together, composites, and make those companies integrate those products. Then also R&D, I've mentioned that with the soil and CO2. And also by providing network, basically connecting stakeholders at all levels, policymakers, different NGOs, environmental organizations, and businesses. So that will create a community. This is a little bit of why it is important. It's a bit of a context. We obviously all know that. Why are we doing all these things that we're doing with our projects? It's all about what's happening now. Obviously, there are a lot of initiatives, strategies being introduced or already being worked on by the European Union. There's some of them are here. Obviously, it's the circular and bioeconomy. You in Holland or in Amsterdam specifically, you talk a lot about the donut economy. They're all kind of connected. So in our case, it's more of the bioeconomy because hemp is a biomass. There's the EU Green Deal. They talk a lot about farm to fork strategy, eliminating pollutants in the agriculture sector. All of that in consequence can be achieved by working with more hemp. UN Sustainable Development Goals and Paris agreements. That's that. And all the companies are now setting very ambitious climate goals or carbon reduction goals. They're building coalitions. There are all these pledges, you know, with billions of dollars or euros being poured in by very wealthy companies, well-established companies, but sometimes they don't know how to achieve those goals, right? So this is where we can help. This is this graph again. I'm just showing this because I'd like to show you like what we want to focus on in the hemp and cannabis industry. Or basically you can see the other way, what we don't want to focus on as an organization is really the CBD sector derived from flowers and seeds. So we focus more on the industrial part. There's another version of that where I talk about the seeds and fibers. Again, it's not the flower that we want to focus on. Here I'll just quickly show you like some of the applications of hemp, and sometimes it's surprising to people of like what kind of products can be made of it. So yeah, there are all kinds of plastics and biocomposites already on the market. There are all kinds of companies working on this. It's looking quite promising in this sector. Here are some resources if you later want to check out some of those. You can check back on the video and look through some of these links. Also, obviously, textile, you know, Levi's, for example, has just started to work with hemp. Patagonia has been working with hemp for a couple of years. A lot of those textiles are cottonized hemp, so they're mixed with cotton. Again, some resources here. Hemp can be used for biofuels. There are all kinds of presentations now and first discussions about hydrogen, for example, also being made out of the fermented cannabis stalks. Obviously, hemp biodiesel has been done a few times. Now there are first pilots in Belgium, actually, where some companies are working on that. One of them is called Beyond Oil. We're in partnership process with them, just discussing what could be done next year as a big biorefinery for hemp. One of the surprising ones is energy storage. So this was just recently found out just a couple of years ago, where they talk a lot about supercapacitors. So that's not a typical battery, but it's what's being used in electromobiles, for example, to hold energy for a short period of time. That can be made out of hemp, and it's way cheaper than graphene, for example. Again, here's some resources if you want to take a look at this. It's quite interesting. This Robert Murray talks about this in his lab, and he's quite eccentric guy to look at. Pulp and paper, obviously one of the most known applications of hemp. We all know that it can be done. It's not the most easily scalable, but certainly there's an argument to be made against it, but there's a lot of arguments that can be made for it, because we basically don't have to cut trees. So we haven't yet gotten to the part of where we count exactly what the impact of replacing X amount of tons of regular paper would be instead of if we work with hemp, for example. But it would be interesting. Definitely up for it if anyone wants to join the party. Another here, resources. So again, it's not just all about paper here. There's a company in the US called Hempwood that's now doing vinyl floors, hemp wood, hemp furniture. It's getting its first contracts on that by major hotel chains, for example. I've heard that Marriott is really looking into that business, and is now contracting these companies to produce more hemp wood products. Again, saving trees, it's pretty nice. Construction, I won't talk a lot about that because Albert is now going to take over in a second, and he has tons of experience working with hempcrete and hemp buildings. But it's an interesting material. It's one of those construction materials, basically, if not the only one, that is carbon negative and can proudly wear this badge of being carbon negative. So a lot of construction companies are now being interested in that, at least. And again, some resources here. Close to you in Holland, there's a guy called Wolf Jordan. He's my good friend. Really interesting guy, working with hempcrete for a long time. Hemp plasters, he's an artist. Then on Hemp Today, there are lots of articles about the fire test. Basically, what they've been doing in the US. It passed with 0, with the best possible rating for in anti-inflammable. So it's not inflammable. You might use it in California. We now know that in Australia they're doing hundreds of projects of buildings made out of hempcrete after the wildfires of the last year. Here, just to wrap up, what do we want to target? Who do we want to target? What's our target for our consultancy? Is, after a long time thinking strategically, is definitely businesses and companies, because they're the ones that can make a big difference, and then they can scale the industry. And as a consequence, consumers get educated and they vote with their money. So if there is any big company, like now Lego, for example, is looking at doing a hemp-based plastic series by 2030, Levy's already working with hemp. They do hemp jeans. IKEA could do hemp-based biocomposites, hemp wood furniture. Those examples from before, they're all kinds of brands working in textile industry that have the resources to make the change happen. So that's one of our target audiences. And then we want to also influence policymakers, EU officials, European Commission, as we are based in Europe, all kinds of industry clusters where we can get directly to the businesses and companies. Here are our partners. That's just the very beginning. We're very proud to be part of the climate cleanup. And I think it's a wonderful community, and I'm really looking forward to what's to come out of this collaboration. So yeah, if you want to support us, you can just log into our website and sign up as a member. That would be a great help. You will also become a part of the community. We can do all kinds of webinars. We have groups where we discuss issues, hemp related and environmental sustainability related issues. So that would be nice. And yeah, thank you for your attention. I will now pass the word to Albert, who's going to talk about DUNAGRO and his company.
The first picture is a little bit where we're proud of. There's the first house we built in Holland where people living in. The first building we have made was a mobile building that we put in Fab City in Amsterdam years ago. Together with Esther Molenwijk, she organized this. And I know in that time when the Fab City was opened by the Minister of Holland, that she walked with a big circle around us because she was afraid of the name Hemp House. So that's only 4 or 5 years ago. It changed now, but that's how difficult it is to work with hemp. A lot of people are still afraid of the hemp plant because of the lot of problems that did the hemp in the past. But we are a company who grow 1,200 hectares of hemp, and our focus at the moment is the building. So I show you a little bit about what we are doing, growing, processing. We build with hemp coal. We show you some properties we are working on, and we have some examples. Growing our hemp. So we do not use any chemicals on our hemp. It's make the soil better for the next crops. It absorbs a lot of CO2, around 14,000 kilo per hectare. And it's very fast growing. You see hemp grows in 3 months to 3 meters high. So he can do a lot in a short time. We are very strong in developing new technology for the hemp, because when we started in 1994 with the hemp, there was not else than old machinery. There was not any modern machinery available for the hemp. And because now don't forget that the hemp business stopped for more than 30 years at that time. The only country where the hemp was still growing was France. And hemp is still the biggest grower at the moment for the industrial hemp. They mostly grow it for paper industry and building. We have a processing plant where we can process around between 6 and 8 tons of straw per hour. We can process here around 3,000 hectares. At the moment, we are 1,200 hectares. One of the reasons is that the market is not growing quick enough. So it's go slow. And every time when there's crisis coming, we see it going down. We see it in 2008 and 2009, the banking crisis, halfway again. And now we have the Corona crisis, and you see the demands of hemp products go down again. So every crisis brings us down to a little bit lower level. So we have hard to work to rise up again. So our factory is in Auropekela, and we process around between 6 and 8 tons an hour. We do around 1,200 hectares in Holland at the moment. A lot of products what we make out of our straw are fibers for the automotive industry, the sheaves for the animal bedding and for the housing. We do some leaves and flowers for tea, for CBD, but CBD is a hard job at the moment because the big CBD market is destroyed at the moment by the lot of influence from people who only use the hemp for CBD and not for the rest of the products. So they take the most benefit part at the moment away from the fiber production units. So they have a hell of a job to suffer against this. And all the hemp that's growing for CBD does not do anything good to environment. There's also a little bit of the seed production, of course, because in Canada, they grow 3,500 hectares of hemp only for seed production. So there's a lot of straw not used at the moment. And there's a lot of benefits, a lot of work to do to make it happen. Otherwise, hemp doesn't help for environment when you don't use the CO2. So all the products we made at the moment is the only product that's useful for the CO2 is the building. Because in houses, you can keep the CO2 for a very long time. And all the other products are only for 1 season or 1 year. So it comes back in a circle again after a year. but houses, it's much longer time. We are making our hempcrete from our shaves together with a natural cement. And the natural cement is the part that when you make this, you lose CO2 because they heat it up to 1000 degrees. And therefore you lose a lot of CO2 to the air. But when you build a house together with this VCAT, the house take the next 30 years, the CO2 back that you lose by the production of the cement. So that's a circle. That's a circle. That's the only reason why hemp houses take CO2 into the house, into the walls, because the lime that we are using needs CO2. One of the biggest problems with making hemp houses is that before the house is dry, it takes 2 years before it's completely dry. That will not say you cannot live in it. After 2 months, 3 months, you can live in the house, but the insulation value will become to the maximum after 2 years. After drying the periods, our prefab panels are ready to put on the structure on the sides. So this is our first house we built, 2016. It was the first house, complete house that we built in that time. One house, 1 hectare of hemp takes 14 tons of CO2 per hectare, but netto 9 tons per hectare, because for the production, harvesting, and the processing, you lose CO2. So netto outcome per hectare is around 9 tons. A hemp house use around 14 tons of CO2. So you can store 14 tons of CO2 in one house, compared to normal houses that they are doing now at the moment mostly, they cost 25 tons. So the difference between a normal house and a hemp house are huge. That means how more houses we will build from hemp, how better the system works, and how more CO2 will be stored in the house after. But after 100 years or 50 years, when you stop with the house, the circle go back. So it's always a circle, of course. But for the next years, we must build more houses to keep the CO2 that we have too much in the air now. My former speaker mentioned already the fire resistance. Hemp houses cannot burn, will not burn. Even no smoke coming out of the wall. That's one of the fantastic things about the hempcretes. But the reason is not the hemp himself. The reason is the calcium cement we're using. It protects the hemp against fire. Also, another very nice component of the hemp is that the sound test we are doing. So in a hemp house, when you live inside a hemp house, you almost don't hear anything because the sound reduction is enormous. And that's the reason why we say the best way to build houses around Amsterdam against the noise is, one reason is of course the corona, because you have no airplanes in the air anymore. But the next is to build the houses from hemp, so the people don't hear the airplanes again. So the sound reduction is huge. Our company has all kinds of test reports now for fire resistance, for insulation value, all the test of the strengths that you need for building. Some examples that we built after the first house, 2016. One is in 2018 in Hoogezand, close to here. This is a 50 centimeter thick wall. It's a sustainable house, completely, very nice, completely from hemp. That means the wall, the first floor, the roof, everything is made from hempcrete. And that's the difference between us and other companies who make it by blocks or this. We do everything, inside wall, outside walls, roof, first floor, everything is made from hempcrete. That's the reason why we put so many hemp CO2 in one house. This is the front side of this same house. This is the house we built in Ommen. That's the center of Holland. It's also a beautiful house. And this is, so we built last year 6 houses. And this house we start this year in Rotterdam. It's almost finished from our work now. It's a building, a double house. It's a building of 15 meter wide, 70 meter long, 3 stories high. It's a huge house. We are working now, or almost finalizing 36 houses in Boekel, in Brabant. It's Eco Village, they call it. So it's all, every circle has 12 houses. So it's from older people. They buy the house, they make it all ready for themselves, but we deliver all the panels for these houses. We are now at the moment building a house in Sappemeer, also close to here. In our prefab walls, we make all the electric components are built in the walls. So every pipe that you need is building before we produce the pipes, the panels. So here you see a panel for the wooden framework we produce before it goes under the press. And after the 5 minutes, the press is ready and it's go outside for drying. And when it's 2 months old, between 1 and 2 months, we can put it on the side where the house will be built. Work where we are working on at the moment. There's an innovation center in Ommen. We will finish this work soon. Maybe one thing that I know now today or 2 days ago for sure that we have to build in Zaandam, close to Amsterdam, environmental, how do you call it, house for teaching. And that's a building of 22 meter wide, 30 meter long, 2 stories high. But that's for teaching for the environmental. That's close to Amsterdam. So slowly we go, yeah, more and more. We are making flex houses. That means we have 2 houses now almost ready here for little houses that you can use for 10 or 15 years. So they call it so-called tiny houses or temporary houses. And Eindhoven, last week or 14 days ago, some young architects won the prize, the first prize of a 7 stories high building made with our hempcrete panels. So we think this project will go on too. And we are talking with some architect in Amsterdam to build a 24 apartments house there. Hemp has medical, technical, health, and environmental benefits. Hemp construction by hand, casting on site, has proven itself for years. And I mean for years. Everybody forgets that in France, they built already 60 years long hemp houses. So France is also one of the biggest producers of all hemp kind of products in the world. They are not so known as they're doing. They are almost the only country near China who always produced hemp products. From the fibers in France, for example, they mostly make cigarette paper out of it. So that's not so good for the environment, but all the other stuff, woods and all that, they put in houses. A lot of for bedding, but so the French did a lot of work in the hemp industry. They are also, at the moment, they have the most seeds available for all kinds of uses. And that's, yeah, my last picture always. That's what we're saying. We are growing our own house. That means now, I'm restart my own house and it will be a hemp house. So I can say I'm growing my own house. And we are very proud of this, and we hope that much more people will doing this in the future, because building houses out of hemp, it's fantastic, and it helps really the world to save for the CO2. Thank you at the moment.